Hi everyone, welcome to the Core Vitality Summit. My name is Yvonne Britton and I'm joined today by the wonderful Sabrina Choquette Tully. Sabrina is a soul coach, a speaker and a Hay House author, and also someone very, very special to me. She's had a major impact on my own personal life, my life and my family's life, so I'm super excited to have you here today, Sabrina. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here.
Thank you. So, Sabrina, that sounds really nice, a soul coach, a speaker, and a Hay House author. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do before we get into the questions?
Yes, I have to laugh because I feel like this is the question when I'm out in the world. Like today I went and I was, just getting my groceries and the guy behind the counter said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I stopped and I kind of looked at him and I said, I help people. I said, the easiest way that I can say is that I just help people get back in touch with who they really are, their intuition, their spirit, their essential self. And then from there, incredible things happen. People's lives change. I sometimes like to think of myself as a soul cheerleader, that we enter into soulful conversation together, and through that, something really incredible happens. So it's hard to quantify in a way, but I help people get back in touch with their soul. And my sister and I wrote a book together last year called You Are Amazing. And these were just, it came about that we wanted to write a book to help our generation, not specifically just our generation, but our generation get back in touch with the tools of their intuition to help them make decisions, because we're in sort of this interesting time right now where everything is a bit uncertain, and it is important that we have access to our intuition in order to make decisions that are really in alignment with who we are and what we want and who we want to be in the world. So that's sort of what I do in a nutshell.
Well, I think soul cheerleader would be how I would describe you if I could choose the right words. I think cheerleader would be in it for sure, but the soul cheerleader is a perfect way to explain what you do, and you do it very beautifully, I have to say.
Thank you.
So the question I had for you, and you kind of touched on it a little bit now, was what do you think are the main factors nowadays that contribute to us having a lack of vitality? And if we can go beyond what we eat, exercise type of thing, what can be going on in the background that actually would eventually impact what we eat and our exercise?
It's such a great question, because oftentimes what I find when I start working with clients is that they are deeply, deeply exhausted. And that it is deeper than physical body. I like to call it soul burnout. And it's basically that we get to this place that we're so disconnected from our bodies, from our emotions, from our shadows, from these deep parts of ourselves that are essential in order to feel connected and vibrant and alive. And so, past just exercise and what we eat, we really have to get in touch with who we are and get in touch with our soul, get in touch with our spirit, get in touch with our intuition. We have to go beyond just the body. The way to do that, it is through the portal of the physical body in a lot of ways. I mean, that is where our spirit resides. I love my grandmother, who's 85. She always says to us, she's really the matriarch of our family, the one that introduced deeply to my mother's life intuition, and then through my mother to me, that our bodies, our physical bodies, were our sacred temples that held our spirit, and that these were sacred vessels. So the first thing that we have to do is understand that we are souls and spirit living embodied, physical bodies. But more than anything, if we're out of touch with our authentic voice, or the voice of our hearts, it is very hard to feel energized, because we're basically living our lives in our head, disconnected. It's like there's the head, and then there's a cut, and then there's the body. And so most people are not embodied. They're not physically connected to their physical body, and it is very hard to feel energized if you're not living in your body. So the first thing I say is you've got to come home. You got to come home and you've got to put yourself back in your body and be connected to the divine being that you are physically. And then from there, you can get in touch with that voice of your intuition or the voice of your heart. And then the voice of your heart will tell you what you do need. It'll tell you where you need to focus in order to get back in touch with your energized self. But it is sort of backwards. Most people are focusing only on the body or only on what they eat, but not really looking at these deeper places that we become disconnected.
Yeah, that really resonates with me personally. So if you are, I know that you, along with your book, you have a work it book, that you know, we'll have the link in the email here to, because it's a free workbook, that provides tips and tools. Does that, those tips and tools kind of like geared towards, you know, getting back in touch with the voice of your heart?
Yes, absolutely. The little Work It workbook we wrote that went along with our book were just easy, quick tools to get in touch with your intuition. And, you know, oftentimes we think of intuition as almost something outside of ourselves, like out there, a voice that's out there. But when we really get that it's the voice that is inside of us and connected to our own heart space, it doesn't take much for our hearts to speak. We just have to be willing to listen. So the Work It workbook are just practical little tips and tools of, okay, what can I actually do right now to get in touch with the voice of my heart? One of my favorite tools that's in the book is that you just place your hand on your heart and you say out loud, my head says, and then you let your head speak. So if you're, let's say, having an issue or you're struggling with something, you can say, my head says that I don't have enough money, and my head says that I'm really too old, or my head says that I'm too young, or my head says nobody will believe me or take me seriously. Your head usually has a lot to say about things, a lot of opinions. And then you put your hand on your heart, you take a deep breath, and you just really focus on the place of your physical heart. And you say out loud, my heart says, and you listen. You just listen to what your heart has to say. And it's really simple. You know, we try to make these things, and I think growing up so my mom is a spiritual teacher, and she travels, and for our whole lives I've been really immersed in the self-help world. It's why at the tender age of 18 I started my own practice, because I had been really raised in this conscious, awake energy of living in the heart, and I recognized early on that most people were really disconnected from the voice of their heart. They were really in their heads, and I thought, I can help people get back in touch with their heart. I can help them get back in touch with the voice of their soul. It's not that complicated. It involves being available and listening. So these little tools, I mean, we think it's like this big thing, but it's really just being available to know that you have a heart and your heart has something to say. And then from that place, you can make a decision. You can either listen to your heart or not. You can listen to your head or not, but to start to be aware of the difference. And, you know, often for me, when I put my hand on my heart, I'll be like, my heart will be like, relax. Everything's fine. Like the voice of my heart generally is much more grounded and calm and present than the voice of my head. And so when I'm struggling, I'll go to the voice of my heart and I will use this as just like a great practice tool.
I had totally forgotten about that one, I have to say, and it's something I've used in the past, and I know how powerful it is. So thanks for sharing that one. It is really amazing when you use it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned helping people, Sabrina. Was that the motivation behind writing the book for yourself and Sonia?
Yeah, I think for us it was really important that we communicate that these tools are simple and that we're all in it together. I think it was two things. I think the first part was that we had these really amazing tools. Growing up with having a spiritual teacher mother who helped champion people back into their souls, we were really given these incredibly simple, accessible tools from a young age that helped us access our intuition. And after the markets crashed in 2008, my sister graduated from college. I was coaching. My sister actually started writing the book on her own. And she was writing, but it was kind of a struggle. And she got the intuitive hit from her heart to ask me to write the book with her. And then from that point, the book just sort of happened. Like everything really flowed, and we started talking together about all these tools that our mom had all these spiritual principles, these tools, these stories. We also were just 20-something women who were living life and going through things and going on journeys and breaking up with guys and meeting new ones. But you know what I mean? We were just living our lives. And we're using these tools to help navigate our lives, and using these tools that our mom had taught us to help navigate being a young person in the world. So it became sort of this place of like, okay, let's go write about what we've been learning and how we've been learning to implement that in the world. And so it happened really, I think it came out of this place, you know, we often describe our book as a love letter to our generation. That it was like, we love our generation. We want to empower them with these really practical, simple tools so that they can make choices that are in alignment with their authentic selves. And I really believe that if we do that, if we listen to our hearts and we listen to our intuition and we make decisions from there, we can heal the planet. And right now the planet is kind of in peril. You know, things are a little bit crazy right now, and we need these heart voices to help navigate through this time.
Yeah, that's for sure. Definitely. Sabrina, when you were growing up, like, was it already second nature for you to tune into your own intuition in that way? And did you feel different from other people, or you know, when you were with friends, did they kind of like pick up on your practices and implement them as well, or you know, did you rub off on other people, or did they rub off on you where you maybe didn't use your intuition as much?
It's a great question. I think that I grew up in this incredible environment where my intuition was my sixth sense, and it was respected alongside all of my other senses. So what I knew, what I sensed, this voice of my heart, I was really championed in that it was true, real, and important. So it's like you wouldn't argue with a kid and what they see or what they smell. If they say, I smell something, you'd say, oh, okay. In the same way, when I said I had an intuitive hit or I felt something, it was respected. It was important. And so from a young age, I really respected my intuition as a part of me, as my sixth sense. It would be like not trusting your vision. I always trusted my vision. I trusted what I saw. In the same way I trusted what I felt. But I know that my mom's protection of our intuition growing up really allowed for that to be possible. She really protected us, and in a lot of ways didn't make our intuition weird. You know, it wasn't weird. It was just normal to us to be intuitive, to pick up on things, to feel things, to sense things, to be extrasensory was normal. When I got into, like, I would say school time, that's when I had sort of the rude awakening that the way I lived was maybe not the way that everybody lived. And that most kids naturally are pretty intuitive. It was, I would say, more middle school time. And it became a little bit more difficult. And I often say that we have snake medicine in our family because, you know, my mom was one of the first people to write a book called The Psychic Pathway, which was about being extra, you know, sensory. And now these things, it's like Kim Kardashian's using the tools, literally. But at the time, 30 years ago, psychic and psycho sound very close together to, you know, school-age kids. So we were the psycho family, you know. And I think that for me, I would say maybe my sister has a little bit of a different relationship, but for me, it kind of empowered me to not care what people thought. It was like I knew who I was, and I knew who we were, and the truth and the authenticity of how important this voice was within myself. And the world caught up Like, eventually the world caught up, and a lot of the kids that made fun of me in school have come back around and, like, bought my book, you know, later and wrote me beautiful messages about how beautiful my book was for them. Like, that's incredible. You know, it comes full circle. But a lot of the times when we are intuitive renegades, when we're doing things a little bit different that are different than the society is going in that moment, when we really have to march to the beat of our own drum, it is a challenge. And I would say that I was blessed to be able to have a home where I was really supported. And I know that for a lot of people who come to me that start working with me, that's the thing they're lacking is support, that they have intuition, they have a voice of their soul, they have a connection to their spirit, but they may not have a safe space to talk about that, to acknowledge it as true and real and important. And more than anything, I feel like that's the thing that we for everyone in my family, my mom, my sister, and I, what we provide for people is a safe container to get in touch with that voice, to get in touch with their heart, and to support and champion them in that and encourage them to listen to it, because when we do, magical things start to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right. And when I think it's so difficult, I mean, you were lucky to be brought up in that way, but if you haven't, and then you become more aware of it and you acknowledge that you have this intuition, but you can't quite tell the difference between what your head says and what your heart says.
Right.
It's really very useful to have that safe space to talk to someone, and it's almost like exercising a muscle, I think. You know, and eventually it could become second nature, but I think it is tricky at the beginning to know, you know, is this your heart talking or is this your head? And like you say, right. The head is very talkative and has very strong opinions.
The heart tends to be a bit more calm and quiet.
Yeah.
And a little less intense.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Sabrina, you mentioned a couple of times, you said it there, about talking, you know, because, you know, maybe we when we're adults, we have this idea of, we eventually realize our intuition, and it's really funny because, you know, I work in the corporate world, and it's in fashion at the moment for the big VPs to stand up in a room full of people and say, this is my intuition. So even in the corporate world at the moment, it's kind of like,
it's happening.
Yeah, it's happening. That's what they stand up and say. You're on teleconferences and they'll say, you know, there's a problem, and someone says, well, my intuition says this. So that's been really interesting. That's only, I would say, in the past year or two I've started to hear that.
Well, you know what's so interesting about that, too, is that we are intuitive beings. We are built to be receivers. And it's only in the last, I would say, few years that we are all coming out of the closet a bit and being more honest about what has always been. Some of the biggest, best businessmen in the world and women in the world will point to their intuition and say, it was that got me here. But the intuition is interesting because it's the part of us that is maybe not easy to rationalize. It's like our intuitive self feels and knows things, but we might not have a reason. So when we make an intuitive decision with our health, with our families, with our relationships, we're sort of saying, okay, I don't know how I know this, but I'm going to trust the sense I have that's sort of beyond me. And I love that what you're saying, that it's like now it's becoming in fashion in the corporate world, because bosses have been doing this forever, whether or not we've been acknowledging it as true. And the more we listen to it, the better, the more holistic approach we're all going to have to our lives.
Yeah, and do you know what I was just thinking, that sometimes a bit weird? It's sometimes easier to hear it when you ignore it. That sounds really weird, but if you're in a situation and you're going to make a decision and you've got this little voice inside your head and you kind of like push it away, or maybe not inside your head, but there's something saying, you know, don't do it, and then you're like, I'm going to do it, but there's that feeling, and then afterwards, it's quite easy to look back and recognize that feeling of intuition when you didn't act on it. For me personally,
right.
It sounds like really weird, but
no, we call that the shoulda, coulda, woulda club. It's when you get an intuitive hit and you ignore it. You go, I should have done that. I could have done that. You know, it's like the shoulda, coulda, woulda club. It's important that we do pay attention to when, you know, it's all about awareness. It's paying attention and being aware. Just because you get an intuitive hit doesn't mean you don't still have free will choice. And so we have to not only hear the intuition, we have to respect it and take action. You know, then we get you know, today I was like walking out of the grocery store and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And just in that moment, like, do I take the tube back? Do I take the cab back? Should I call an Uber? Like, I was in this moment of like, what do I do? And just in that moment, there was a cab that was a little pink cab with a unicorn on the side, flipped a U-turn because of the traffic and landed right in front of me. And in this moment, I just made eye contact and I was like, there you go. It was like, boom. That's
the unicorn.
That's a moment. With the unicorn pink, taking me home. We just zipped through. It was perfect. It was literally in that moment. If I had hesitated, I would have missed it. You know, when we're available, when we're open, that's when we get into flow with life. And our intuition feels beyond what our brain can perceive. So that's why we can trust it, because it's like having an antenna or like having an internet system inside of our bodies built in. We have internet, high-speed internet inside of us all the time. If we're ignoring or pushing it away, that's when we miss our moment. That's when we miss the bus, or we miss the thing that, the connection. Or it's when we listen, we're perfectly aligned in that moment to be in flow, to receive the gift or the guidance or whatever it is. So to me, it's just it's moment to moment to moment. It's making decisions every moment to be more awake and aware of our intuition. It's that inner voice.
Yeah, and you mentioned kids a couple of times actually. When you were a kid, but I'm just thinking like us as adults, we can work on these things when we can become more aware. But then you're bringing up children, and you're then aware of this other person. How can we encourage our kids to be more intuitive? Or to respect that sixth sense that they probably start with, right. And then we probably condition it out of them.
Right. I mean, kids are naturally intuitive. They are. Anybody who spends time with kids, they will pick up, know things, say things that are so perceptive and accurate. Society tends to encourage us to listen to authority outside of ourselves more than it does to listen to the authority within ourselves. So the issue here is that most often we are conditioned to go to society, to the church, to our parents, to outside of ourselves, telling me what to do instead of to really tune into myself. So the first thing I would say for anybody that has kids is talk to them about their intuition as a matter of fact. What do you know? How do you feel? What do you sense? That they actually do know themselves better than we give them credit for knowing themselves. Like we tend to not respect that little beings come in fully awake and conscious. And it is through a lot of love and support that we can encourage them to be awake and aware of how they feel and what their sense of knowing is. If you introduce it like it's not weird, or like, oh, that was so weird, but instead, like, that's so wonderful. Isn't it wonderful that you knew that or that you sensed that? I'm trying to think of an example, but it's like I had one encounter with my goddaughter that I love, when she was 4 years old, and her name is Allie, and I said to her, Allie, where does your spirit live? And just in that moment, she just pointed right to her heart. She had this is like a little person who has nobody's told her anything about it yet. But I said, where does your spirit live, Allie? She said, it lives in Heel. She had the cutest little, she lives in Heel. And I was like, and to her it was so like, duh, this is where my spirit lives. And it was so, to me, reaffirming. I write about it in our book because it was like, yeah, we do know. We know where our spirit lives. We know, we learn over time to doubt it. but it's not that we don't know it. So it's not that you're teaching them anything. It's that you're preserving what is their sacred gift. And you're being protective of it. You're not tearing it down, and you're not making it weird for them, but you're encouraging them to listen to themselves and to listen to the voices of their hearts. It's also the voice of our heart that has compassion for the world. Kids oftentimes have a tremendous amount of compassion for animals, for plants. They feel things. We become desensitized as we get older, but kids are sensitive, and we also have to respect that. It's like you don't tell them to buck up or knock it off. It's like we have to encourage them to stay open to their human bodies and experiences. That's how we protect their intuition.
So when you were growing up, would it be like normal for you to hear someone ask you, so what does your what does your intuition say, or what do you sense, or what does your sixth sense say? Like, what kind of wording? I'm just trying to think practically, what kind of words could work for small kids.
So the one we used in our family was, what do your vibes say? My mom would always say, what do your vibes say? What vibes do you have on this? And for some reason, even now, that's a term that's my mom wrote a book called Trust Your Vibes. And it's one of her best-selling books, because it's one of those things that we know what a vibe is. And a vibe really means a vibration. So it's the vibration or the energy that we're picking up on. That is what intuition is. We're picking up on energy that may be beyond our brain's ability to perceive it. So in our family, we just say, what's your vibe on it? What's your vibe? And that was a direct question that was really easy to ask, and we would know. And then the second part is we would respect it. Like, if you had a bad vibe about something or somebody, say, I have a bad vibe about that person, or I've got a good vibe about that person. That was information, and it was respected, so that was sort of how we would word it. I think that made it very accessible, very easy, very relatable. It wasn't woo-woo or weird, or, people I think would be surprised by how grounded our lives were growing up. Our mom's really pretty grounded, and things were spirituality was grounded spirituality. And if anything, now I have to laugh, because as all of these tools and techniques are becoming more mainstream, they're almost getting a little bit more woo-woo. It's very natural for us to be intuitive, to know what we need, to know what we need to eat, to know where we need to go. These are natural things. They're rhythms and cycles of life. And so it isn't weird or out there. It's just in here and normal. So vibes. I would say vibes. What are your vibes?
Okay. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one. Sabrina, we're almost out of time, but I just wanted to ask you one more question. When you yourself feel ungrounded or stressed or disconnected, what are your favourite things to do to connect with yourself again?
I would say, for me, the most important thing I have in my life is my regular daily meditation practice. And for a long time, I really resisted it, and I did it, but almost begrudgingly, like the thing I had to do. But when I really started to understand that it was just this place that I could go reconnect to my own energy, I softened. So I would say, for me, the most important thing is a connection to my breath. I breathe a lot. I'm a highly anxious person. I'm very sensitive and intuitive, and so oftentimes I'll just get a wild hair feeling when I'm out in the world, and I may just be picking up on somebody else's bad vibe that might not even have anything to do with me. So I breathe in through the nose, and I breathe out through the mouth like I'm blowing out a birthday candle. So I breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, hold for a second, and breathe out. Equal, if not a little bit longer, maybe 5 seconds on the out breath. That's huge. The second thing is I'm really conscious of what I eat. For me, food is, I've been gluten-free for like a decade now, and dairy-free, and very mindful of sugar. And now it's popular. At the time, it was sort of just necessary because I was sick all the time. So being conscious of what I'm putting in my body and how it affects me, and paying attention to that, even things like last week I was like, I think I'm eating too many mangoes. I think it's really making me feel a little crazy. I think the mango, that's overdoing it on the mangoes. But I had to, part of me was like, oh, just ignore it. I eat all the mangoes, like, whatever. But another part of me was like, I think it's too much sugar. I think I'm overdoing it, or maybe not eating the mango at the right time of day. So it's sort of paying attention not only to my breath, to the moment, but also, to being really, really conscious and awake and aware of how things affect me, and then making good choices about, and self-loving choices about, what can I do to really help myself feel good and grounded and de-stress. And, sometimes, to be honest, that's a little bit of ice cream and a Real Housewives of Orange County. Sometimes that'll be the thing that helps me chill out. Like, I'm all for that, but I have to be honest with myself about, is that the thing I really need? So it's about honesty, moment to moment, and making good decisions in the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I love that thing about mangoes. I think there is actually like an optimal time of day to eat mangoes.
I do
They're really
too.
good. They're really good for sleeping, actually. Where can people find out more about you, Sabrina?
I have a website, sabrinatully.com. You can find out more about our book, You Are Amazing. It's on Amazon, and we have a website for our book and our speaking engagements. My sister and I do workshops together. We're going to be teaching in Canada this year, and hopefully in the UK. So you can find out more about us at soniaandsabrina.com.
Oh, can't wait for that. Sabrina, thank you from the bottom of my heart, really. I'm so honoured and so grateful to have you here talking with us today. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, it is my pleasure. You are one of my favorite people on the planet. So I could not think of a better way to spend half an hour than chatting with you. It is literally my honor and my privilege to be here.
Thank you, Sabrina.